Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Cobern, and today's episode is the Kansas City Chiefs draft class. Starting with the first pick of the draft, Patrick Mahomes, quarterback out of Texas Tech. When it comes to his high school production, he scored 60.85. When it comes to his high school production score, the unfortunate part about his high school production score is that since the 2007 NFL draft class, there has not been a long-term starter in the NFL who's had less than a 69 overall score, and not only that, there hasn't been a Pro Bowl quarterback in that time span from the 2007 NFL draft class to now who's had a high school production score of 84 or higher, which is kind of the threshold when it comes to Pro Bowl quarterbacks. And that's a pretty big sample size, by the way. That high school production score, which takes into account touchdown interception ratio and completion percentage, is very, very high. Like 6,000 plus guys in the sample size. So I would say that that's kind of a little bit of a flag. I mean, when you have a guy who would be unprecedented to become a starter, let alone a Pro Bowl guy in terms of his high school production score. I know I've gotten some criticism for high school production data, but the data speaks for itself. So I published this data at draftcoburn.wordpress.com. Anybody can check it out and see the results for themselves. But I would say that that's just one sort of issue. And the other reason why I created the high school production data was because it was really a way to kind of see if the offense that a player plays in kind of inflates their stats or makes them look better than they really are. One example is Jared Goff. Jared Goff was a guy who played in a similar type of system as Patrick Mahomes. And this was Jared Goff's high school production, and he didn't quite have a very good transition to the NFL. And I don't necessarily think this is going to be the exact same case with Mahomes, because Mahomes has much better arm talent, of course, much stronger arm. But it's just a thing to think about when it comes to concerns. But he does have one big positive when it comes to his college production. He scored 86.83 when it comes to his complete QB stat score. This score is formulated from the touchdown interception ratio and the completion percentage based on a 10-year average, and it goes all the way back to the 1958 NFL draft class. So if you want something to kind of buck with the high school production stuff, you have the college production stuff. He hit the Pro Bowl level when it comes to college production, but the high school production stuff kind of disagrees. I'm not going to lie, Mahomes is very much a up-in-the-air type of prospect to project from a data perspective. The situation that he's going into with Andy Reid, I've been talking about Mahomes and Andy Reid for a while in terms of which coach I think would be the best to get his hands on someone, and I think Mahomes is in the right spot to become a successful player. But I'm just saying that there are some concerns from a high school production standpoint that he may not hit the sort of heights that he should hit. So, Andy Reid is an excellent coach. He's worked with guys like Brett Favre. He's worked with guys like Donovan McNabb. And Mahomes does have very similar traits to Brett Favre and McNabb when it comes to their production and comes to sort of other factors. But it is just some level of concern. How I actually feel about Mahomes, I think he'll be a long-term starter to potential Pro Bowler based on film and that sort of aspect of things. But based on a data perspective, there just is that red flag there when it comes to Mahomes. And then we come to the next pick of the draft in terms of Tano Passignon. When it comes to his production, he scored 64.07 in terms of solo tackle market share, 82.04 when it comes to sack market share, 94.47 when it comes to tackle for loss market share. His only issue is that this production looks decent on the surface, but this is at the FCS level. There's only been a handful of players from that level of competition that have become successful players. And Jared Allen, Jr. Gillette, and both those players, Gillette and Jared Allen, had much better production overall than Tano. And this is actually them compared to each other when it comes to production. But Tano does have some positive athleticism traits. Scored 84.64 when it comes to explosiveness for his size, 73.05 when it comes to speed for his size, but only 48.11 when it comes to flexibility for his size. He's essentially an explosion speed athlete, someone that isn't going to be great when it comes to anchoring and just leverage in general, which is something that was on film with him, is that he's a tall player, but he's not very flexible for his height. So he can become a long-term starter. I think there are some things that contradict that a bit from his production at his level of competition, especially. But I don't think high-quality outcomes are really in the tables for Tano, though. Again, because of the level of competition, because of his athleticism, I think high quality is off the table. But I think there is potential that he could become a starter based on his athleticism traits. He just isn't someone that I think is going to be amazing because of his production and because of his flexibility traits. Then we come to the next pick of the draft in terms of Kareem Hunt, running back out of Toledo. When it comes to his production, he scored 84.15 when it comes to his total offensive market share production, which is pretty much hits all the marks that you're looking for when it comes to Pro Bowl level production. But his only issue is athleticism. He scored 79.34 when it comes to explosiveness for size, 47.81 when it comes to speed for size, and 26.24 when it comes to flexibility for size. All those marks are, the explosion number is good, but the speed number is below average and the flexibility number is below average as well. On top of the fact that his 3-cone is 7.22 and 92% of multiple Pro Bowl / All-Pro running backs since the 1999 NFL draft class had a 3-cone of 7.09 or less, with the only exception being DeMarco Murray. And this is Kareem Hunt compared to DeMarco Murray in terms of data profile. Kareem Hunt is a much more productive player than DeMarco Murray, but he doesn't have what DeMarco Murray has in terms of a great speed score, elite speed score actually, and above average athleticism across the board. So unfortunately, I don't think Kareem Hunt kind of fits into the DeMarco Murray rule when it comes to the 3-cone. But he is a guy that I think can become a long-term starter based on his athleticism, based on his production. I think that that's what you should expect from Hunt. He could be a Chris Ivory type running back, is what I'm trying to say. So don't get it twisted. He's going to be a long-term starter. It's just that when it comes to high-quality outcomes, he isn't exactly going to be that type of guy for you. He isn't going to be Jamal Charles or any, a player like that, essentially. Then we come to the next pick of the draft in terms of Jehu Chesson, wide receiver out of Michigan. When it comes to his production, he scored 43.66 in terms of passing yards market share production, which isn't good. He did not hit starter-level production, which is based since the 1969 NFL draft class. There have been only about 4 wide receivers out of 200 plus wide receivers to become a long-term starter with less than a 58 market share production score, and most of those wide receivers were guys like Julian Edelman and Antoine Randall, who were former quarterbacks, which is why they weren't productive, versus Jehu Chesson, who's been a full-time wide receiver. So that production isn't exactly great. His age score isn't very impactful either, with an age score of 24.93 out of 100. But he has positive athleticism traits, which is why I think the Chiefs drafted him. 71.58 in terms of explosives for his size, 65.98 when it comes to speed for his size, and 90.01 when it comes to flexibility for his size. Unfortunately, this Jehu Chesson pick smells as a lot like many of the other Chiefs picks that they've taken in the past, in terms of trying to get these athletic wide receivers and seeing what happens. I just don't think that there's enough here from a production standpoint. He just doesn't hit the marks of a starting wide receiver. So despite the fact that he has excellent athleticism, points, he just doesn't have the production of a very special wide receiver, making me think that he could be one of the first guys that honestly I don't really have a very good thing to say from a data perspective. I think more likely he becomes a backup to reserve based on his overall athleticism with his production, because his production just drags his entire profile down, on top of his age, which also drags his whole profile down, because he got to a very old age and still didn't break out in a meaningful way. So that is a concern, at least with him. Then we come to the next pick of the draft in terms of Akemie Lee, linebacker from Georgia Southern by way of Florida State. When it comes to his production, he scored 78.66 in terms of sole attacker market share production, hitting the Pro Bowl level when it comes to that production threshold. 100% of multiple Pro Bowl linebackers since the 1996 NFL draft class had at least a solo tackle market share score of 77 or higher, and Akemie at least hits that threshold. He doesn't hit all pro thresholds, which are 90 or higher, but he does hit the Pro Bowl thresholds when it comes to that production score. And then when it comes to athleticism, he had 58.77 in terms of explosives for size, 80.70 in terms of speed for size, and 55.78 when it comes to flexibility for his size. Overall, he doesn't quite have an elite production profile. It doesn't really hit the Pro Bowl areas when it comes to explosiveness and flexibility. But I think there's a long-term starter here. I think when you look at his production and you look at his athleticism traits, you have a guy that can become a long-term starter. And Pro Bowl stuff isn't very likely, but at the very least, long-term starter is not necessarily something to sneeze at. It's something that only 90% of most players drafted don't become long-term starters, just to put that in perspective. So I think he could potentially be a starter for you guys, but there are just some questions when it comes to his overall not production, but athleticism traits. Then we come to the last pick of the draft in terms of Leon McQuay, the third safety from USC. When it comes to his production, he scored 14.27 in terms of solo tackle market share, 29.36 when it comes to interception market share, and 32.21 when it comes to pass deflection market share. Overall, he just does not have very good production. None of his production really hits the marks in terms of really high-quality safeties. And not only that, there's never been a long-term safety with his production profile since the 1999 NFL draft class. There just hasn't been someone this unproductive to become a long-term safety with this production. And based on his athleticism, he only did one thing, which was the broad jump and the short and the broad jump and the vertical jump. And based on that, his explosion score was 18.65 for his size, which does not hit any meaningful thresholds when it comes to quality players either. Leon McQuay is essentially one of the least likely players drafted to become much of anything other than a reserve to backup player. So how do I feel about the Kansas City Chiefs draft class? Well, I'm excited about it. I'm excited because you get a quarterback. I mean, the big thing about the Chiefs is that it's more about, the team is already there. The things are already in place for this team to become a successful, playoff team and potentially a Super Bowl bound team. Except the quarterback has always been the question mark in terms of what's holding this team back. Is it Alex Smith? Is it this? Is it that? Stuff like that. And I think when you get a guy like Mahomes, you do have some risk based on the high school production, but you have lots of reward based on his arm talent and based on Andy Reid, who has shown to take guys like Mahomes, like McNabb, like Brett Favre, who's probably the most done-to-death comparison, but he's taken players like this and he's turned them into special players, or at least players that to get to Pro Bowls and to get to beyond that, that can work in his system. So I'm excited about that pick from that perspective because Mahomes ended up in the best situation possible to become a successful player. And if Andy Reid can't, buck the trend in terms of high school production, then no one can, when it comes to that sort of thing. Tano, though, is not the biggest pick I'm the fan of. Like, again, there's things that just cap his overall upside. I think there was better defensive end prospects that you could have taken than Tano, who had better production and better athleticism marks. And Kareem Hunt is another player, but I think there was a couple running backs that were a little bit better than Kareem Hunt in terms of high quality outcomes. Kareem Hunt is going to be a good player. It's just Kareem Hunt is never going to be a multiple Pro Bowl player or multiple All-Pro player based on his athleticism traits. Jehu Chesson is another guy that I think is more of a backup. Leon McQuay is more of a backup as well. And Akemie is a guy who has potential to be a starter, but the Georgia Southern tape wasn't exactly great. Kind of looked like he was just trying to get by until he got to the draft. So this Chiefs draft is, it's good. I think you could have done a little bit better, but I am super excited about it because of Mahomes. I do think you got some starters in here. It's just that it's like anything else. If Mahomes ends up busting out, then that's pretty much the end of Andy Reid and Kansas City. So, but I am excited about this pick because of the opportunity that they have with a guy like Mahomes, and we'll see what happens from there. So, My name is James Cobern. You can follow my work at draftcobern.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Geometrics. If you like this content, if you want more content like this, feel free to like and subscribe. I demand for you to like and subscribe. Hit that like button. And I will talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.